Newstalk Breakfast.
In association with AIR. Seamless connections with Ireland's #1 broadband provider.
Let's get the latest from Suzanne Lynch, a journalist with Politico Europe. Bring us up to speed on what exactly is happening, Suzanne.
Yeah, well, good morning. EU ambassadors are meeting this morning in kind of an emergency meeting to discuss the next steps from the EU side. As you said there, I mean, the options, the EU and America, have ruled out going in with troops. That's not going to happen. The EU can't anyway. But the US and NATO are not going to go in and help Ukraine. They are going to be on their own if this turns into a fully fledged war. But what they can do is sanctions. So we know the European Commission has prepared a package of sanctions. It had been kind of taking stock with different countries about what parts of their economies would be hit. We've talked about Germany before, for example, very dependent on gas, but also Italy is a lot of trade with Russia, lots of Russian visitors. It was kind of uncomfortable too about these sanctions, but we do know the sanctions package has been agreed and it's kind of ready to give the green light. The big question now though is and it's the same for the US, what would trigger these sanctions? Are we at that point already? Because Putin has moved in these troops into these two separatist held areas in the east of Ukraine. But interestingly, last night in Washington, a senior official was saying there, Russia has had a presence there for the last few years, since about 2014. So they were kind of implying this doesn't constitute a full-scale war at this point. But you have a lot of countries saying, no, we need to act now on sanctions. And I was at the Munich Security Conference at the weekend, and it was a really moving, passionate speech by the Ukrainian President Zelensky, who put it up to allies and said, why are you waiting? If you're so convinced that Russia is poised to invade, why not do the sanctions now? It's going to be too late once they've invaded. So that's kind of, I think, where the debate is going to be here in Brussels over the next 24 hours or so.
OK, we will leave it there. Suzanne Lynch, journalist with Politico Europe. Thanks indeed for talking to Newstalk Breakfast this morning.
And for more on this, we're joined by Cormac Smith, former advisor to Pavlo Klimkin, Ukraine's former foreign minister. Cormac, you have great insight into all of this. What do you think is going to happen now?
And Ciara, could I start off by complimenting you and your colleague for getting your summary of this absolutely spot on. And I must say, Susanna Lynch has, made a great contribution as well. Look, this effectively brings to an end an 8-year charade. The whole situation in eastern Ukraine and the Donbass would not exist. It's a creation of the Russian Federation. It was interesting, I know that I wasn't out there very long when I started to really understand what was going on. There was 1 month we counted Sergei Lavrov said 5 times, denied the fact that Russia was even in the Donbass. There was times I was in Ukraine when Russia had, up to 500 battle tanks. The British Army has 120. Up to 6,000, 6,500 regular Russian officers in command and control positions. I'm told most recently that this has been 3,000 or 4,000, and tens of thousands of Russian paid mercenaries. So it brings to end a charade. As yet, it's unclear. But I look at the words of the Ukrainian ambassador to London last night, Vadim Pristaiko, who said, when a nuclear nation calls your country a historical mistake that needs to be fixed, he said, I'm very, very worried. I mean, there was 2 pieces of political theatre in the Kremlin yesterday, but in the second piece, Putin went on a 1-hour rant, really, about Ukraine. And, giving a lie to being threatened by NATO or anything else, Ukraine is Putin's obsession. He wants to cripple and retard it, and he wants to drag it back into the Russian orbit.
That the impression we get is he wants to subsume it, and this is a kind of an imperialist move by I suppose, a thwarted imperialist. How likely is he to succeed? Are the West going to stand firm, do you think, with Ukraine, or do they have too much to lose?
Well, look, we're not going to put boots on the ground. I think we have shown, in 2014, we sat on our hands. There was a Budapest memorandum signed in 1994 by the UK, US and Russia, guaranteeing the territorial integrity of Ukraine in return for Ukraine giving up the world's third largest nuclear arsenal. Now, many people would say if Ukraine still held that arsenal in 2014, that the Crimea would not have been annexed, nor would Donbass have been invaded. There are hopeful signs that we are waking up. I think the unity in the West, and I think we must give credit to President Biden for, and also the British Prime Minister for significantly marshalling that. There's three things that we need, or there's three things the Ukrainians need. They need absolute unity in the West, and they need sanctions, but they need real sanctions. Look, the sanctions in 2014 were probably on a scale of 3 out of 10. They need to be 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10. Russia now needs to be sanctioned back to the Stone Age. Okay. And we hear an awful lot of talk about how severe sanctions are going to be, but we need to see the detail, and we need to see Putin's feet held to the fire.
Look, thank you very much for speaking to us this morning on all of that. That is Cormac Smith, their former advisor to Pavlo Klimkin, Ukraine's former foreign minister.